Welcome to the Tartan Touchdown episodes, where we take you through all of the latest stories and talking points from this week in the NFL. Well, the nights are fair drawing in, folks, and the season is too. We have got the majority of week 10 to talk about, just that pesky Monday night football still to go. And as the league hits double-digit weeks, we have got it all to talk about on the show for you today. And we're going to be running you through the league's ups and downs, its disappointments, its surprise gems, who runs the show, who needs to leave the show, and who's joining me on the show. And it's Gav today. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing good. I think the Giants mug we'll say is half full. I know it's Victory Monday for some, Black Monday for me. Yeah, we're on to new adventures.
Now, that is going to be something that we are going to talk about later on in the show, because yes, is one of the big bits of news is obviously all change in the coaching office in New York. But before we dive in to your beloved Giants, I've got one question for you. And it is very simply, who runs the AFC? Because before the season started, Gav, that is a question that I could give you a fairly confident answer. The AFC had tiers. Now, the NFC this year, largely, is going to the script. You know, the Eagles are good. They're maybe not as good as they were last year, but they're good. NFC North's an absolute bloodbath. The 49ers are broken, as is tradition. The Saints suck outrageously. And we'll give the NFC that apparently Sam Darnold is good. That is the one very big surprising story that has came out of the NFC so far this year. The AFC, though, the AFC is confusing. I don't know. I like consistency in life. I like things I can depend on. I like to know who's good and who's bad. The Browns are bad. We know the Browns are bad, and that's okay. It's my happy place in a really weird way. But before the season started, we would have very confidently said the AFC has its own little elite tier. You have got the Bills, you have got the Ravens, you have got the Chiefs. They sit on top of the pile, and everyone else wants to pick away at them. This year, of those teams, the Bills are doing the best at 5th in the AFC. Sorry, that is a lie. 6th in the AFC. It's wild. What are we making of the AFC so far this year? We are seeing, for the sake of MD that doesn't maybe look at the conference tables, I know we more often spend our time looking at your divisional tables. The way that the AFC is breaking out so far, we've got the Colts and the Broncos, top of the tree, 8-2 apiece, joined by the Pats as well, at 8-2. You've then got the Steelers sitting at 5-4 by virtue of the AFC North being an absolute joke of a division this year. And you've then got the Chargers at 7-3. Then we bring in the Bills and everybody else follows for there. Gav, what is going on? What is going on with my beloved AFC, mate?
Oh, well, I think it's definitely not how we expected it to pan out. I think we are already starting to see a couple of course corrections in there. Obviously, the Steelers losing on Sunday Night Football overnight. I think we're starting to see things tending back towards what we're expecting in terms of the AFC North and the Ravens. I think despite being in the 4th seed, the Steelers have got a 35% probability of making the playoffs, which tells you certainly what analytics thinks of their situation. But I think for the other divisions, and particular the FC East and West, yeah, we really didn't see this coming. So you're right, the Bills are still there. They're logging big wins, and perhaps we're probably giving them a lot of credit because we're looking at, well, they beat the Chiefs, but again, the Chiefs have dropped a few games too. The Bills have won the games against the big names, but actually some of the games that they've dropped have been kind of eyebrow raising. I mean, I'll call out, they were my pick for the Super Bowl before the start of the season. Could they make a run? Absolutely. But it's starting to look a little wobbly, and you know, we're past the halfway stage now. Some of these teams are going strong. It's not just been a bit flash in the pan for the Pats or indeed the Broncos. Broncos, I will say, have a big matchup coming up this weekend where we'll see what they're really about. But I mean, it's exciting, and this is absolutely why we go ahead and we play the season in the first place. So it's fantastic, and you're looking at the next slate of games in week 11 already. There's about 4 or 5 matchups that are just absolutely intriguing, and at least on paper. We'll see if they if they plan out. But yeah, it's been just hard to know what to make of it, really.
It's interesting, isn't it? Right, so now we can't talk week 10 without talking about the Bills. We can't talk about it without talking about the Bills getting, not even beaten, they got hosed. They got absolutely done by the Dolphins, the much maligned Miami Dolphins. So for those who haven't seen the game, finishes the Dolphins winning 30-13 winners. And it was just, I was going to say it was death by 1,000 cuts. It was death by 1,000 cuts, but the Bills were just cutting themselves. It was the errors. We've seen the catastrophic, the fumble from Josh Allen, the eternally dependable Josh Allen, always in the MVP conversation, always dangerous. And it was great. He looks like, so we've got shot corner for Josh Allen, a QB run play, where it looks like he's about to break out into open field. He's got like a defender dangling on his back, and then right at the last minute, boom, ball gets punched free, fumble, recovered by the Dolphins, and it was the look in Josh Allen's face. He couldn't believe what was happening to him. And yeah, you say that yourself, we've watched, not to do full recaps here, but right, so the Bills, they beat the Ravens, they beat the Jets, they beat the Dolphins in Buffalo, they beat the Saints, then they lose back-to-back to the Patriots and the Falcons. They go on their bye, they beat the Panthers, oh my God, they beat the Chiefs in the regular season again, which they always seem to do in the regular season. And then they go to Miami and they lose. Is this something, I don't know, with the Bills, are we seeing what has plagued the Bills for years at this point, where, yeah, they can win games that they're expected to win, but see when they're really up against it, it just seems to fall apart for them. It's the classic, we see it every year. Yeah, you beat KC in the regular season and lose to them in the playoffs when it really, really matters most. Are we seeing, I don't know, is this a lack of mental toughness for Buffalo that we're seeing?
I think it's hard to say. It's one that I almost want to say, ask me again in a week, because...
Ask me again in 7 weeks when the season is tied up.
But no, I think a lot of people will say that this was a divisional game and strange things happen in divisional games. And that's something that I've never quite understood. Yes, you have rivalries, and yes, you play these teams twice a year. But at the end of the day, with scouting, you can be familiar with just about every team and how they operate. So I don't think that's an issue. But the one trend that I do believe in is the letdown game. You've played that big emotional game against your nemesis, the Chiefs, who, yes, you have dominated in the regular season in recent years, but you've struggled to get over the hump in the playoffs. So there's always that kind of weird synergy between the two, that the Bills feel that they always need to come back and beat the Chiefs in the regular season, and they got over that hump. But I don't know if it's just like you put so much energy, both physically and mentally, into getting that victory, that all of a sudden you just have this lapse the following week. Because it does happen in sports, but there can't be any excuse for losing to Miami. I'm sorry, everyone's professionals and they're there to do a job, but the Dolphins are not a good team. Save for probably a few minutes early in the fourth quarter, the Bills just didn't look in this one at all. So I think for Josh Allen company, you've got to have a short memory. I think this is one of these ones that you've just got to write off and say, we did not get the job done whatsoever. We're on to next week.
Yeah, and it is going to, well, at the end of the day, it's always going to come to that. We love a saying in the NFL, next man up and all the rest of it. One of the ones that's really interesting for me, one of my hotly tipped teams going into the season, who are, do you know what? I actually was just double checking some of the stats on this, and it's not as upsetting as you would maybe think it is. The Denver Broncos, I backed the Broncos going into the preseason, because we were going through the preseason. They were one of my picks to make it the whole way this year. And we seem to be getting one of those things where we say, right, you are an incredibly good defense, as advertised. But on offense, you feel like a real letdown and all the rest of it. When you look at it, so points against in the AFC, Broncos are third best in the division. They're sitting there with currently 173 points put up against them. The Chiefs and the Texans are doing better, but that's it. When you then look at the offensive side of the ball, though, Denver are currently sitting 6th in the division. They're sitting with 235 points, and when you go all the way up to the top of the tree, the league's leading offense that we'll talk a bit about later, the Colts are sat at 321. Is this year okay? That's a big freaky jump, but we're going to talk about the Colts, and we know how good they've been this year. Are the Broncos? Should I have faith in my original projection? Should I believe that the Broncos might actually do something at the tail end of the year when the games really matter and it's really cold? Or are we kind of seeing what we're seeing here, and Bo Nix and this offense just ain't got what it takes to keep that defense as happy as they should be?
Well, as a fan of someone who I think you can say that their team has been exciting but has 2 wins, perhaps
Risky but fun.
we shouldn't criticise Denver too much for actually getting the one stat that matters and actually pile up the victories. I think the one thing, if you do look at this Broncos team, obviously Thursday night was a terrible game, and they had a similarly iffy game against the Jets in London, but they've also blown teams away at points, and whether it was the Giants in a single quarter or the Cowboys throughout the game, they can pile up the points and outscore teams. So I think that there is a bit to, yes, statistically, I think there are some questions over this Broncos team, but they have found different ways to win and actually get that job done. Obviously, they're in a very competitive division this year. The Chargers are only lurking 1 game back. And then, of course, the inevitable Chiefs are 2 games behind themselves. Sunday, the Broncos will have the first of 2 matches with Kansas City for the season. And I think that is going to be a real bellwether in terms of, can they go on? Can they maintain that lead and really kind of lock themselves in for the postseason, try and get that division title? So I think it's possible, but again, we're going to start to get some answers on this Broncos team really soon.
It's going to be really interesting, particularly given the Broncos are undefeated at home this year, 5-0, and KC, they have got 1 road win on the year, 1-3. So if you look at it from a stats point of view, as dangerous as that is, folks, feel free to take this one to the bookies if you want. I'm sure you'll get pretty reasonable odds. I can't say I'll be backing it personally, but yeah, the Broncos should win. They should beat Kansas based on what we've seen so far this year. But like what we talked about with the Bills-Dolphins games, divisional games, they're never easy. Doesn't matter whose stadium you're in. But, well, I'll put it this way, actually. I think what you're saying is really right. It is a bellwether. This is the game where Broncos, you want to be taken seriously. You want to show that you are you're not here to make up the numbers. You're not here to get a wild card spot every other year. You're here because you want to get a deep run. This is where you prove it. Games against teams like Kansas, that's where you show us that, yeah, you are not here to make up the numbers. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. Do you know what? A last one, we're going to move on for this segment, but a last one that I can't not mention, because I do seem to, every time Kansas get mentioned, I do enjoy calling them the baddies and how they're back, and it's like the Empire appearing. The real baddies might actually be back, though. Everybody thinks that Kansas are the baddies. Ladies and gentlemen, the New England Patriots are 8-2. The New England Patriots, after a whopping, 4 years, without a good quarterback, have they found what is Drake Mayhem? Have they found dare I say it, the replacement for Tom Brady? Have they finally found the guy that is going to make the New England Patriots relevant again?
It certainly looks that way at the moment. I mean, Drake May, I think, has just become, as of this weekend, the favourite for MVP. And I mean, it was cool in the off season for a lot of people to tip the Patriots as one of their dark horses for the season. The further, the further we get into the season, still keep piling up the wins. I think all of us on Turn Touchdown picked the Bucks to win at home. And no, Patriots coming out with the win and deservedly so. It's we've talking about the Broncos and Bo Nix, and we have question marks over them, and we feel like there's something to prove. I think as much as we're surprised by the Patriots, I don't think anyone's saying they shouldn't be 8-2. There's nobody that's contesting that at the moment. You've got Mike Vrabel, Patriot way, bringing in that new coach ethos with the team. And Drake May was expected to do great things in the league. Okay, he didn't have an outstanding rookie season, but the kid's still only in year two. It's genuinely fascinating because the Bills will always be competitive, but I think this is one where of all the teams we've talked about so far, the Patriots, they look the real deal.
They do look the real deal in this. When you look ahead at what the Patriots have in front of them, honestly, you jump in, tell me how many games at the end of this you think the Patriots will lose. Okay, here's the Patriots' rest this season. We have got the Jets at the Bengals, the Giants, bye week, Bills at the Ravens, at the Jets, Dolphins, Commanders, at the Vikings, and they close the whole. I skipped ahead into the preseason. They finish out at week 18 at the Dolphins. But yeah, so we are talking Jets, Bengals, Giants, Bills, Ravens, Jets, Dolphins. How many of them is this New England team losing?
Yeah, I mean, you just going in name recognition. That you say the Bills and the Ravens games are probably the only two where you really sense any kind of jeopardy.
It is, yeah. Hey, New England fans, you've been in the cold for a whopping 4 years. Welcome back. Okay, we've been too happy. Too optimistic, Gav. I've decided. I'm a Browns fan. I'm not used to joy. So it is time to talk about disappointment, because disappointment is rife in the NFL and it is rife beyond the great state of Ohio. So we were looking at this, and it was something I was having a wee thinking about who are the players that are your big disappointments. And don't worry, we'll close the segment out talking about the other side of the coin and some of the players that have given you a wee spark of unexpected joy. So who is your number one player this year that you think has been a big disappointment? Now, for clarifying this for everybody listening, doesn't necessarily mean that they have played objectively really, really badly, although I do have one who has. It more means that they are somebody that's maybe not living up to the expectations that we had for the player. But who have you got, Gav? Who is your big player that do you know what? I'm watching you week in, week out. Maybe I watched you week 11. Maybe you didn't even suit up. But you're really not showing what we're looking for from you.
Well, I don't know if Sarah's going to thank me for this or not, but I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. Because he had an incredible rookie season, and then all of a sudden we think Jaguars make the bold move and they draft Travis Hunt. You think, wow, this is a team that's got two outstanding young wide receivers. And Travis Hunt has obviously had flashes. Unfortunately, he's currently dealing with an injury, but it seems that Brian Thomas Jr. just hasn't shown up at all this year.
It's wild. We have got, so for you fantasy fans out there, Brian Thomas Jr. is currently sitting as wide receiver 41. He is not even a wide receiver 3, and you drafted him somewhere in the first 2 rounds of most leagues that were out there. He has got hands that are made of butter. Do you know what he needs? Remember when the league used to allow stickum? That's what he needs. We need to go back to the days when you were allowed to put stickum on your gloves. The drops have been outrageous. And yeah, it's great. This is the joy of having a group chat with fans of different teams in it, is we get all of the very, very live and very visceral reaction from Sarah. Every time Brian Thomas Jr. drops a ball, which, as it turns out, actually last week was, this week was one of the weeks that he didn't drop many balls because he was hurt, so he couldn't sit up. And would you believe it, despite the result, and yes, Sarah, we're all a little sorry that your team lost in truly outrageous, almost Brownsian fashion, actually. The Jags tried to do a better job of beating the Browns than the Browns this week. But yeah, you get beaten in truly outrageous fashion right at the end to the Texans, closing it out 36-29. But this is one where you did actually have Parker Washington looking good as a wide receiving threat for you. You had somebody who made Trevor look like he was a competent quarterback. Who knew? Well, to be fair, he looked like a competent quarterback right up until the very end of the game. But yeah, he has been a wild disappointment. My one for this is actually somebody that's not playing. He's not playing poorly. He's not somebody that you're sitting looking at going, oh my God, I'm such a letdown, all the rest of it. But based on what we expected, based on what we were used to, Saquon Barkley this year is sitting week 11, or sorry, week 10 done. We're about to go into week 11, and he is sitting on 520 odd yards for the year. It's really not many. And this is when you think about, again, it's this idea of what were we expecting from these players. And for Saquon, you were expecting him to maybe not repeat last year, because last year was insane. You know what I mean? Last year, what Saquon was doing was wild. And, it was only slightly overshadowed by like Derrick Henry. But we expected much better than this. And it's really just, I don't know, what's your take on kind of Saquon, the Eagles? We've talked about how the Eagles they're still a good team. I mean, the Eagles are still sitting, as I double check quickly, second in the NFC, I believe. So, you know what I mean? They are doing well. They're having a kind of reasonable year. They're not being, second in the NFC. Saquon, he's not the Saquon that we were expecting, is he?
Yeah, I suppose if you're going to judge, if you're going to judge performances in terms of outcomes, fact of the matter is that the Eagles have only lost 2 games so far this season. It could be Saquon could be piling up a bit more in terms of the yardage and the fantasy points for those who are into that. They're getting the job done, as was always the case last season on their Super Bowl run. They found a way to win. I guess the other thing is we've seen running backs coming off big, even 2,000-yard campaigns. There's always going to be a letdown. I don't know if it's just the volume that they're dealing with or if it is the expectation. And you would think that it doesn't need a 1,000-yard season for defensive coordinators to realise you need to try and bottle the guy up. But certainly teams will adjust and scheme regardless to try and make those changes. So I think we've seen it before with the likes of Adrian Peterson and Chris Johnson and many others over the years that have gone and taken a crack at the rushing record, that there is always going to be a regression the following year. I mean, I guess if you're thinking that we're getting to the halfway stage of the season and that's putting Saquon on track for 1,000, 1,100 yards, something like that. Yeah, it is a step back. But if your team's still winning, you're staying healthy, I'm not sure how much we can criticise.
Just wait, it's okay. I'm saying all this being really big and clever right now. The Eagles haven't actually played this week yet. So just watch. This is where Saquon's going to drop a 400-yard game. 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's going to run literally with Jalen Hurts on his back, like kind of piggyback styley. And that's going to be the Eagles' whole game plan tonight, just to smite me having a dig at Saquon. Yeah, it's as we say, it's the comparison. We've seen what we can win with Saquon, and it's not looked the same so far. We are only at week 10. We do still have just less than half a season in front of us, so we could still see it. One, and I can't resist throwing it out there out of pure petulant reasons. Other big disappointment this year: the entire Pittsburgh Steelers defense, all of them. You're the best paid defensive unit in the league. Consider playing like it. Or don't, because it brings me joy to watch you suffer. I'm not going to dwell on how much I enjoy watching Pittsburgh lose to the Chargers last night, particularly when Aaron Rodgers plays like absolute dog meat, and the rest of the defense does as well. Okay. Right, happy news, happy times. We're here for good times. Let's keep the good vibes rolling. We'll get out of my pit of misery and fear. Who is your shining light? Who is your shiny little gem that has stepped up this year? That you think, do you know what? I did not see this coming, and I'm glad to see it because we all like a nice story.
Well, it's funny we've just been talking about Saquon and me being the Giants fan in the room, because I've got to say I think Daniel Jones' resurgence has been a really pleasant surprise. I think he's maybe not in the MVP conversation, but absolutely a front runner for comeback player of the year.
Yeah, see, there you go. You beat me to that. Surely Daniel Jones. But now that we've established that comeback player of the year, it doesn't need to be coming back from a brutal injury. It can be coming back from playing for a miserable team. Surely it is. Surely Daniel Jones has to be front runner.
I think so. I mean, I guess you could say Sam Darnold didn't actually win the award last year, so is he still eligible? Is it a surprise that he's doing as well as he is in Seattle this year? But yeah, I think given the 5 years that Daniel Jones had in New York. I think, yes, we know that the Giants have not been a well-run franchise for a long time, and that players, as we've seen with Saquon, can rehabilitate themselves simply by escaping New York.
Escaping the pool of New York.
But yeah, I think the Daniel Jones was one that really remained to be seen. We've seen a lot of Colts fans really were not impressed when he was announced as QB1, and he has silenced them, and I don't think any of them are complaining.
Daniel Jones is Snake Plissken. He escaped from New York. Right, okay, sorry folks, I've really dated myself with that reference. You either get that one or you really don't. Right, okay. For me, for this one, I am actually going to say Sam Darnold. For me, I'm a little bit of a cop-out artist. It's a combo. Sam Darnold and JSN. Sam Darnold evidently can play football. Who knew? I was really convinced he was a product of the Vikings system. Good coach, good receivers, good O-line, and that he was going to get found out pretty badly moving to Seattle. Oh, the full line, look. Because, yeah, he's playing really well. And he's elevated JSN to being the top receiver in the league so far this year. You'd struggle to say it's anybody else. So, yeah, a happy one for me. I need to say the Darnold to JSN connection is something that I'm thoroughly enjoying watching week to week. It's something that's absolutely brilliant. Right. Now, Gav, I have actually been kind to you. And I have been, this is great, he knows exactly what's coming. I've been nice about this, and I considered opening the show with this. I was furious, for everybody listening, the news of this broke about an hour before we came on here, and it was actually slated to be a talking point of, I bet this happens, and then the Giants, Gav, undercut me by like 2.5 hours, or whatever it was. So we have had our second head coaching firing of the season, and yes, Gav, it is your previously Coach of the Year winning, lest we forget, head coach Brian Daboll. What are you thinking? What's the thoughts as the Giants fan? You watched another brutal fourth quarter collapse out of your team. Is that really what's caused this? Are we just saying you can't? Losing's one thing. Losing like that's something else, though.
Yeah, I think I've been a defender of Daboll for most of his run. I think I'm on record back in the tail end of last year saying that the Giants should have brought him back for another year. I don't know if maybe I've been guilty of putting too much stock in the old Buffalo Bills connection of Daboll and the GM. At the end of the day, the Bills seem to keep winning. You talk about people that come down from upstate New York, how they do. But I think it's quite clear that the Giants have had an energy about them in terms of Jackson Dart before he got injured, Cam Scatterbo, and of course Malik Neighbours who's been on IR for several weeks now. There is the foundation of an offense that Giants fans have got reason to be excited. Similarly, actually, the defensive front, they have a terrifying defensive line. I think Brian Burns was leading the league in sacks. And of course, you've got Dexter Lawrence, part of that as well. Then you've added Abdul Carter, who's maybe not set the world on fire yet, but it's still early days. So there's a number of players on that Giants defensive front, which you think should be the foundation to build upon. And actually, if you look at the number of the games, it's not just the Giants are 2-8. It's like you say, it's those collapses. So I think the Giants have twice lost the game when leading by more than 10 points in the final 4 minutes of the game.
Yep.
And that's more than the rest of the league combined for this season. They have also blown 4 double-digit leads on the roads. And I guess the other thing is, if we look at the teams that are involved in that, so, okay, the Bears are kind of resurgent. So they're 6-3. They're actually doing pretty well. But when you throw that in with the fact that the Broncos, again, they're doing well, but it's the nature of the collapse there. They shipped over 30 points in the fourth quarter in that game. And then I think the other 2 games that the Giants lost to Dallas, who really don't have much going on. And the Saints.
Well, they're good on offense, Dallas. You need to give Dallas their offense is good. They just don't know what DBs are for.
But yeah, I mean, up until this beginning, and the Saints, the Giants gave them their first win of the season. So it's not just that they've been blowing leads, but in some cases they've been doing it against, if we're not going to call them bad, then certainly mediocre teams. And I think that's the thing. Like, you're not always going to win every single game which you're leading, but the fact that you've lost so many of them and having been in a position to win the games, that does suggest that there's something amiss. And unfortunately, I think it was becoming evident that as the Giants have started to add to the roster, that it's the coaching staff is always going to need amendments. I will say that the one thing that's caught me out, I guess, is making the move mid-season. I'm not sure how much this is going to benefit anyone making that move. The Giants have got the Packers next weekend. Their bye's not for a few weeks yet. And it's just going to be Kafka, the offensive coordinator, that takes over in the interim. I guess my hope would be that the Giants don't get suckered into looking at how the interim does. They have multiple, they have multiple pieces to build around. So it's despite that 2-win record so far, if you're an incoming head coach, there's a lot to like. I think Jackson Dart, if he can stay away from the concussions, which is something else. But Jackson Dart is showing real promise, both as a quarterback, but actually as a leader for the team as well. And that's really what you want to see. So hopefully it's going to attract some interest for the Giants. But I think in terms of the decision, I can quibble over the timing, but I think it was always coming.
Yeah, well, the NFL is a ruthless business. And as you know, the timing is, you can quibble over it, but I don't think anybody in New York is tremendously surprised at it. The next logical question for here, and I need to face up to this one myself, is who else is on the old chopping block? We've had 2 head coaches down so far this year, and we know fine well there's going to be more coming. For me, the big one that's coming up next got to be Stefanski. He's got to be in the block. We've just watched, and yes, Gav, it's okay. I'll talk about how my own team sucks really bad. So, Cleveland Browns, you talked about how the Giants, with their kind of very unfortunate records with blowing leads, and within 4 minutes to go, the Browns earned themselves a record at the weekend. We earned something by allowing the New York Jets to run back-to-back return touchdown plays. A 99-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, and then a 74-yard punt return touchdown is the first time that, since 1950, I think that is the first time that has happened since 1950. This was a game that it was an embarrassing game because of the nature of the loss. So yeah, Jets won out 27-20 victors over the Browns. Browns special teams spotted them 13 points. Browns special team gifted the Jets 14. So you can turn around and say, right, so the Browns defense is the Browns defense. It is exceptionally good. It is elite. It didn't give the Jets a huge amount. They bar one very good, I must admit, rushing touchdown play from Breece Hall. The Jets offense was the Jets offense. And we've seen the Jets offense struggle. They've had a couple of spiky games through the year, but nothing that impressive. And then you have the 2 special downs howlers. And then you have got, when you are trying to get back onto the field to get a shot of tying the game up. And you then have on not quite back-to-back plays, but you then have a defensive holding penalty when you have got the Jets on 3rd and 16. Defensive holding penalty, fresh set of downs. You then, even then, you still have a chance. You then have the Jets 3rd and 3, and you jump. And you give them this fresh set of downs again, and yes, and then the rest is history, and they close the game out, and you beat yourself. So yeah, it's one. Stefanski has dined out on some Coach of the Year performances, much like Daboll. Coach of the Year is in the locker. We've seen some really good things. But yeah, people of Cleveland, the time is now. Stefanski, he has to go. I don't see him seeing the season out. There's no way he sees it out, because it's awful. It's not even the fact that the team are losing. The Browns are, if they're not last, they are second last in every major offensive category on the season. It's brutal stuff to watch. So he's my shout for who else is next in the block. Now, I know that you've got 1 or 2 in your head. I know you've certainly got one in your head, Gav, that you think might also be on the hottest of coaching hot seats. So you've seen your own coach go. I'm calling for my coach to go. For people who are not represented by one of the pair of us, who else do you see possibly facing the chop before the season's out?
Well, I mean, the one I guess we'll probably just put a pin in for now is Mike McDaniel in Miami, because it's been said that he will remain the coach until the end of the season. Now, obviously, what happens after that remains to be seen, but he is in role for the time being. So I think that was maybe the obvious one in my mind.
So is that the end of the Miami Dolphins season or the end of the NFL season? Because I feel that they might be two different points in time.
This is true. But no, I think one which I think is a bit of a shocker, but I think is looking increasingly likely is Pete Carroll in Vegas. Is looking like it could be one and done.
Will it even be a full one?
I mean, this is Vegas. It's not even Vegas. This is the Raiders. It doesn't seem to have worked. That's all I can say. Carroll, long successful tenure in Seattle. I don't think he is going to be the second coming in Vegas.
No, I'd agree. The other one for me that I think is probably facing the block before the season's long is, well, do you know, it's funny because I suppose he's in possibly the same bucket as Mike McDaniel. Zach Taylor. Now, I've been saying it all off season. I've said it all last season, and I'm still saying it this season. We are seeing the Bengals do Bengals things, where you had it with Joe Burrow. Apparently, it doesn't matter what the surname is as long as the first name is Joe. Throwing 400 yards and many touchdowns a game is a thing with that Bengals offense. They are one of the best offenses in the league to watch. And obviously, they were in bye this week. But they're one of the best offenses to watch generally, but their defense has been so consistently poor. This season, last season, pre-season, pick your poison. So for me, I think Zach Taylor's probably in a pretty hot seat as well. And before we move on, I am going to say it. I've said it before, said it in our chat. I'm convinced the Bills through that game. The Bills want Mike McDaniel to live on in Miami. This is D chess. This is playing the longest of the long games, because they know that, okay, you might get your one spiky game a year, but that's it, Miami. You ain't doing much more dangerous than that. So, I'm calling for it. I'm calling tuna on the entire state of Buffalo. Right, okay, move this on. So we're going to talk about something that was good for once. The international series. We had a game that was not played in the US that was a good game. Now, and I don't, this is great because before we came on here, Gav was making a point. He always was quite upset with the entitlement of the international fans, feeling that we deserve Super Bowl level matchups every year. And I appreciate that because we do. But I'm just happy that we had a game in Berlin that was good to watch. So, yeah, what were you mentioned earlier, you talked about Daniel Jones and how impressed you've been with him in Indy. We got to see a blood-covered Daniel Jones this week, where he took it was 7 or 8 sacks. I can't remember what they totaled out at in the end. I think it was certainly 7 when I stopped counting.
But let's not forget the bench that he also took.
Yeah, I think that's when he cut his face up. He decided to fight a bench with his head.
But do you know what? Actually, let's go back a week for a second with the Colts. They had just come off the loss to the Steelers. So, yeah, the Colts were absolutely rolling, and then they get quite comprehensively beaten. And everyone said, well, this is the game where you take Jonathan Taylor away. The Steelers made Daniel Jones take the game in his back, and it didn't happen. Well, I'll tell you what, Jonathan Taylor had himself an absolute game in Berlin. When it came down to it, and the Colts needed to get a game-tying field goal, it was Daniel Jones that made the plays on that drive. I think he had, it was a 3rd and 16. I think he had to, he didn't quite convert, but he turned a scramble into a manageable 4th and 3, something like that. Made a couple of beautiful passes to keep drives alive. I think we saw that was not a must-win game, but certainly there's a lot of pressure in that situation. And yeah, that was Daniel Jones who saved the game. I'd absolutely say, yeah, John Taylor, you score 3 touchdowns, you make your contribution to it. But let's not say that Daniel Jones didn't make some of the critical plays in that matchup. But I mean, it was just such a feast. I think we saw plays in both sides. Drake London, I think we should give a shout out to the Falcons. continuing to have a fantastic campaign. Yeah, it was, I think everything about both teams, crowd, we've got Country Road blaring in the Olympia Stadium.
Yet another rendition of Sweet Caroline.
It was a perfect advert. And I do think that, I think sometimes, especially UK fans, we feel like we should be getting great games all the time. Ultimately, someone has to play the Cleveland Browns every week. I'm sorry,
We are the Cleveland Browns.
but it was great to see an advert for the game like that. And I think it's testament to everyone involved in the teams that put it on. It was a fantastic start to the game weekend for us.
Yeah, it really was. I do enjoy you saying, we watched how week before, the Steelers had the game plan sorted and we're going to take Jonathan Taylor away from you. And the Falcons coaching staff obviously watched that and thought, you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you Jonathan Taylor back. Let's see how this goes for us. JT, 244 yards on 32 carries. It's insane. Yet another hat trick day for JT. What I will say is I enjoy watching Jonathan Taylor play every single week. And I'm actually a big fan of Drake London, I must say. I do enjoy Drake London watching him play. It was a really good game. There was one stat. And I asked Gav the question earlier with this one. I didn't tell him the answer, but I asked him the question. As much as, yes, there was a lot of offense to see. Game finished 31-25. With overtime, no less. Sorry, not overtime. That's overtime. Overtime. However, with all of that said, there were a total of 20 third downs played throughout the match. How many of them, Gav, do you think were converted? Third down. Some say the most important down.
So I promise that I've not Googled this. I'm going to go with 3.
He's very close, ladies and gentlemen. He's very, very close. It was 2. There were 2, and they were both converted by the Colts. The Atlanta Falcons had 8 third downs and did not convert a single one. The Colts did convert 2 out of their 12. And I should add, the Colts did actually also convert 2 out of 4 fourth downs. So they did at least have a little bit more to their kind of clutch side of their offense. But yeah, no, it was an incredible game. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. We are used to some of the international series, and I don't mean the caliber of the teams that are playing. I just mean the caliber of the product we get sometimes is a bit ropey. I would have said up to this, the Vikings-Browns game was the best of the international series so far. But that was a cracker. It was a game that we all thoroughly enjoyed. Now, something that you mentioned earlier, Gav, you mentioned how Danny Dimes, whilst not in the MVP running, certainly should be considered comeback player of the year. And you mentioned quite rightly that the current leader in the betting for MVP is Drake May, with DraftKings having him at plus 275. If we are ever going to have a year where the league eventually decides that MVP isn't exclusively a quarterback prize, which I am not convinced we have yet, but I live in the land of hope. We thought Saquon should really have had it last year, but he didn't. Jonathan Taylor is currently 4th in the odds. Current top 4 for running for MVP. You've got Drake May, Matt Stafford, Pat Mahomes, and then Jonathan Taylor. Is this the year, Gav? Do we see Jonathan Taylor has already broke 1,000 yards? It is week 10, and JT has broke 1,000 yards. He looks a shoe-in to get a 2,000-yard season. Will he break the all-time rushing record? Who knows? Maybe. Could be the year. There's so many moving parts with that one, I don't like to guess. If he continues at the pace that he's going, though, do we see, finally, for the first time, and I'm not that sure, I'd need to go back and check the last time a non-QB won MVP. It's certainly not been yesterday. Are we going to see it happen with Jonathan Taylor this year?
So I think you can absolutely make the case why he should win it, but I think you've already named one reason why I'm very wary of him not winning it, and that is Saquon and what he went through last year. I guess the question that I would put back is, what does Jonathan Taylor need to do to actually win MVP? Guess if you do set the all-time record, then maybe that does just put you over the top. But as we've seen, even a 2,000-yard season with Taquan wasn't quite enough. I just feel like there's got to be something that is going to make it undeniable.
It's interesting. So I quickly double checked. The last time a non-quarterback won it was a running back. It was AP. It was Adrian Peterson back in 2012. So that's how long it's been since we've seen a non-quarterback win it. And yeah, is this something that is fundamentally what we need to see? JT need to set the all-time rushing record in order to stand a chance at winning it. For me, I don't quite think that's right. I've always actually been kind of on board with it being a quarterback-heavy award, because at the end of the day, the quarterback, your offense, for most teams, runs through your quarterback. Yes, it's a team sport, and it's many, myself included, would probably say it's the ultimate team sport, but the quarterback is a singular position in how it operates. Colts' league-leading offense runs through Jonathan Taylor. He is the lens that offense is focused through. Yes, Daniel Jones is playing well. Not going to argue with that in the slightest. Great narrative, great story, all the rest. If we're saying that it's about who is the player who is most important, most valuable to their team, I don't think you can find an argument that says any player is more valuable to their team individually than Jonathan Taylor so far. That's my speech. That's my TED talk. That's me. Well done. Thank you for listening, everybody. I hope everybody agrees and you all now vote for Jonathan Taylor.
I think it's also maybe worth thinking about what the competition is as well. So I think the Colts, I know they've got the Chiefs coming up in the next couple of weeks, and that's one we'd maybe expecting to drop a game. But I do still think that by and large that the Colts are going to be on a big record going into December. If you then look at, well, who the competition is, we talked about Drake May. And again, we talked about the Patriots. They are in a situation where they may only drop another 1 or 2 games total in the rest of the season. The other thing, I guess, with the Patriots is that if you look at Drake May's situation, you can kind of talk about how the Colts have got this pairing of Jonathan Taylor, but also the resurgence of Daniel Jones isn't like another obvious number 2 in New England. Obviously, there are plenty of players that are playing their parts to get there, but there's maybe not another headline maker in the same way that we've got 2 in Indianapolis, and that's, I guess, maybe one reason why you can say that the case for Drake May is just that little bit stronger, just because the spotlight is just that bit more focused.
Yeah, and it's the one, I suppose, what you say about when you compare the Patriots run into the Colts, they are two very different animals. Right, okay, we're going to wrap this one up, Gav, because at the end, if this is going to turn into a propaganda piece for JT if I don't stop myself. So, well, once we get the Eagles-Packers game out of the way, Week 10 will officially be in the books. But as always, here at the Tartan Touchdown, we are looking ahead. We are keen to think about what's coming around the corner. Gav, when you look at the Week 11 slate of games, what is the individual, none of this picking doublers nonsense, that is really whetting your appetite for another week of NFL action?
Well, I was going to say that this is a really stacked schedule. I think there's 3 or 4 games. But if you're going to ask me,
yes, it is, Gav. That's why I'm only giving you one.
I am going to come back to what we were talking about earlier. Chiefs versus Broncos. That is the proof point for Bo Nix and the Broncos so far this season. Are they for real? Can they go to 9-2 and actually take a 3.5, 4 game lead over Kansas City? That would be a massive statement. It's obviously in the prime time window, and I think that's going to be just, fascinating to see how that one goes.
Yeah, it's going to be a cracker. It's certainly one of the ones that jumps out. For me, I am particularly, because I love a narrative like this, if I'm very, very honest, I am really looking forward to the Bucs Bills. Well, we all know my love of Baker. I do love Baker. I really want Baker back in Brown. It'll never happen. But yeah, the Bucs have been doing well so far this year. The Bills, we know, are coming off a sore one to Miami. And the Bucs are no slouches. The Bucs are a good team. They are not a team that's going to be in the dance. You know, they are not winning a Lombardi at the end of the year. So this is one of the ones where, for me, I think the Bills need to stamp their foot down a little. I think this is one where it's in Buffalo. Buffalo. I do like just referring to the Bills as constantly Buffalo, even though they don't actually play in Buffalo. But they need to make a point here. They need to show that we are still the Buffalo Bills. There is a reason that everybody was putting us in an elite list of teams before the season started. And yeah, we might have taken a bit of a sucky loss to the Dolphins, but other than that, we are still something to be reckoned with. So for me, that's what I'm going to put my flag down and say that that's going to be game of the week this week. America's game is not going to feature the Cowboys because I'd forgotten who they were playing this week. And the NFL script writers, if indeed they do exist, have a wicked sense of humour. putting the Raiders Cowboys on at prime time. 'Cause that's not gonna. I feel that won't be a classic. Right. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of the show, and it is always a sad time when it is the end of the show, Gav. Thank you very much for joining me, mate. It's been great to talk all things Week 10.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
And to all of you wonderful, wonderful folks listening, thank you very much. Remember, you can catch up with us on YouTube. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts. Listen in, subscribe, get in touch with us. You know that we love to hear from you guys. And until next time, I've been Brian, he's been Gav, and we'll see you in the next one.